Good evening to everybody, and welcome to Punch Kick Choke Chat. As I just said, Sean's not here. He's off at a red carpet premiere for some work that he did, and we're really happy for him for his success. That's the reward he gets. He gets to go be a big shot and walk down this red carpet and do this stuff. And we knew him when he was dreaming about doing those things. So we're really happy for him that he can be doing those things now. He's a great person. He worked really hard, and we're happy for him. But tonight, who is here is Sensei Neil Prime. He's a good friend to all of us, a lifetime martial artist and karateka. We'll do a bigger intro for Sensei Prime a little later. But Sensei Prime, we like to jump right out of the gate with a question. And the out of the gate question for you is, we were talking about this before. You did karate in the 70s. You trained under a lot of legendary instructors. You competed. You run a dojo. I want to know what's missing today in karate that was there in the 70s. Like in the 70s and 80s when you were training, what's something that was there that maybe is still here today, but lesser that you wish was like a bigger part of today's karate scene?
I think it's inevitable when something gets popular that you have to make concessions. And I'm a nonprofit guy, so I'm exempt from that. That's not entirely true, but I I understand that martial arts should be for everybody, and it can be for everybody. Um, I just the values change kind of with society. People are demanding, and if they're paying good money to go to a club, then maybe they do have that right. To ask for certain things, but that's not the Bushido way. Basically, you're a student, and I'm not saying you shouldn't question your instructor, but your instructor is setting the path for you, and that's an important thing that I think is. It's not that it's gone. It's just there's been some concessions made, and um, that would be the biggest thing that I've noticed over the years.
Can you be specific about the concessions that you see? Like, are you talking about people getting graded and ranked that they
Oh
shouldn't be,
yeah.
they don't have that skill level? Like, what are we talking about specifically?
We would never ask to be graded in rank, and that is something that's a common question these days. And I don't want to be one of these guys who's bashing everybody and saying it shouldn't be this way and it shouldn't be that way. Everybody has their own way of doing things, but um, to give in, to keep the numbers up, to keep people happy. It's just a little bit of a different attitude. I mean, I can't spar the way I in a non-contact tournament the way I did 30, 40 years ago. It's just not the way it is. And sport karate is amazing. There's amazing, but
Sorry,
yeah,
Sensei Prime.
yeah,
Sorry.
no problem, no problem. But it's I guess because maybe it's a little bit different. I try to look at the differences as a positive thing, but I just I like the old traditional, somewhere in between the blood and guts era and today. You know.
Um, I'm gonna ask Sensei Legacy because I know he holds similar opinions. Do you have any thoughts on that, Sensei? Like, what do you wish was still? I mean, in our dojo, nobody asks you to be graded, but is there any things from back in the day that you wish were still more prevalent today than?
I guess the main thing with me would be that when I was a young guy, 21, I looked at karate as something that not everybody could do, and that I really wanted to do it. I really wanted to do all the hard work, take my bumps and bruises, and now karate seems to be more in a parlor house type of scenario, in gyms, and the nicer the gym is, the more people you get in. And also in my day, we never wore equipment. There was no equipment. Back of my hands are all cut up. I used to look like Elvis and all that from bad joke there. Um, I just think that it's more of, if I can use this, it's more of a sport than it is a classical art, a fighting art. And again, younger people coming in, they start crying or they start complaining, or they don't think that they should be getting roughed up a little bit. I mean, it's a fighting art. Right? It's a warrior art. You're gonna get bumps and bruises. And when I had bumps and bruises, I was proud of getting them because I knew that I wasn't standing on the sidewalk watching everything go by. It's hard to explain, but it's, I guess, parlor house karate would a good description of what I do, mostly as it is today. But there are still good clubs, and really those are the people who hold the classics still out there, and that gives you some type of hope that it will go back to its original way.
So, question for you now. Thank you, Sensei. See, a question for you, Sensei Prime, to build on that is, do you have any thoughts on what can be done to combat that, to bring that back, or people that you see that are doing it well? You say you run a nonprofit, but do you see people who run a profit, and what are they doing to combat some of these things that we're talking about that other people should do?
So all I'm saying about the way I run my club is, and not that I want to lay such a firm line that it's my way or the highway sort of thing, but if I was worried about putting food on the table as a result of the number of people coming in the doors, I may have to look at it a little differently. I think we do pretty good, and there's a lot of great clubs out there too. Don't get me wrong, that are full time and they have wonderful passion, and they really do provide a community service. And maybe our society today is just maybe we highlight too much of the negative things when there's so many positive things that we should be focusing on, right? So that's what I try to do, is say, let people know that this is where we stand, this is what we do, and it works. It works. I don't have the biggest club around by any means, but I'm pretty proud of the people that come through and that stay and follow that regiment with us.
Amazing. So, Serena, I'm going to throw it to you now on what can be done. You have a thriving club, very big club. What are some of the things that you do to the people are tough there. I go there, I train with them. The rolling is aggressive and as hard as you want to make it with the upper echelon. The karate's good. The Iaido is world class. Like, what are you doing to combat some of these things that we're talking about?
Yeah, I agree with Sensei Prime. I don't think there's a hard line there, but I do think you have to remember your classical values. One thing we don't do is lower the standards or tell people they're good when they're not. You have to put the work in. And what we do is we train in the martial art, like in karate, right? We train our kata, we train our basics, we train our sparring. In judo, we do our free practice, we do our basics. We do a cycle at JMAC. We train to the tests, we do the tests, then we train more stuff that's not related to the test, more creative things or more bunkai or things that they might not see. And then in 3 months and 4 months, we cycle back into the test and you stay there a long time. You get exposed to it all. We just train in those martial arts and we just do it over and over again. It sounds crazy. The magic formula is we're not trying to pick up something new every 2 months or change what we do based on the fashion of the times. And yet, you know, we're also positive and kind and welcoming and encouraging. You know, Randy, you and I have talked about this quite a bit. I think the doors are wider open at the front of the dojo. I think that means more people train. I don't think it means any fewer people become really, really good. I think you still get an upper echelon, and you might have 8 people in your dojo and 7 of them become really, really good, or you might have 200 people in your dojo and 7 of them become really good. Like I just, you know, you're giving more people an opportunity to be great. I don't think that necessarily means more people become great. Does that make any sense?
That makes total sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that you're talking about, Sensei Prime, I like to combat it like right as soon as somebody walks in the door of the dojo. And I will be honest too, I have a full-time job during the day and a full-time job in the evening. I go to the dojo every single night and teach, and I do charge money. And I tell the people when they come in, this money is not for me to teach you. This money is so that you have a space in an air-conditioned room, climate controlled with nice equipment. That's what your money is going towards. Don't ask me to teach you program and don't ask me to grade you. And I'm even usually more strict with the parents than I am the adults. They when we do the interview process, they know as soon as they see the students, they're like, okay, this is the culture takes care of itself there. I find I get it mostly from the parents. When is Billy gonna grade? Why did Sally grade before Johnny? And I'm just like, it's none of your business. Don't ask me those questions. I'll talk to you about your kid and nobody else. And your dues are so your kid can come here, not so I will teach them program or grade them. On that note, I want to say thanks for joining this show live. If you're on the Zoom platform, we like you here. And if you're joining live on YouTube, we like you there as well, even though we can't see you. Um, if you're listening live or watching later on any of the podcast formats, because you can get our show on any of them, like Spotify or Anchor, any of them, we really appreciate it if you put a like, give us a comment, give us a thumbs up. One of the things we've been asking people to do lately is if you could give us a Google or a Facebook review, it's very helpful. It just, we don't make any money on this. Going back to what we're talking about, we do it because we're really trying to do a service to the martial arts. So if you could do your part by helping the martial arts, by just putting a thumbs up or a like, those shows then appear more, and these guests that we're having, their prominence grows a little bit, and we get to tag along with them. While that's happening for them, it's happening for us too. I do want to mention that if you have any questions for Sensei Prime, and as Ben would say, if you have any questions and they're not rat shit terrible, we might actually ask them of Sensei Prime. And you could just put those down in the chat, and Dridi will light that up down in the bottom, and yeah, we'll get them, and somebody will filter them and ask them. I'm really pleased and privileged to be here with my instructors, Nicholas Suino Sensei and Gary Legacy Hanshi. And one of the things I wanted to say about them tonight is we often talk about like what prolific martial artists they are in their chosen arts, and you know, how great of teachers they are and the stable of great martial artists that they have underneath them. But one thing I want to call everybody's attention to is these two men are also great, great students. I learned how to be a student by watching them be students. And I've been really privileged to be on the floor with them when they were on the floor with their instructors. So, you know, with Sensei Suino, I've been on the floor with him when he's been on the floor with Nobetsu and Yahagi Sensei and Sato, and actually on the floor with Sensei Legacy. And he's an amazing student when he's there. He doesn't talk, he just trains. He does what's required of him. And I always say that Sensei Legacy was always the best student on the floor. When I had the chances to watch him, I spent thousands of hours with him, watching him train with Sensei Sandoval. Just like the most ideal student you would want. Listen, does what's asked, accepts all corrections. I've also seen him on the floor with Sensei Suino. Listen, accept corrections, implement those corrections, and other people that we know. People like Hanshi Bill Hind, Sensei Sloki. I've seen Sensei Legacy on the floor with all of these people. These two men are great students, which is why they're now great instructors and great martial artists, is because they were great students and they are great students. Now what I'm excited to do is introduce Sensei Prime. And I need my glasses for this, Sensei, because I'm reading my notes and I can't see them. So Sensei Neil Prime, he's an 8th Dan in Shintani Wado Kai Karate. He's an 8th Dan in World Traditional Karate Association, 6th Dan in Shindo Bo, the SWKKF, and a 6th Dan in the Superfoot system. That's the system led by Grandmaster Wallace. Amongst his smattering of ranks, he's also a direct student of Hanshi Shintani. And if you don't know who Shintani Sensei is, I always say this, you should go throw yourself off a bridge. He's a person that if you're a karateka, you should know who he is. Also, a student of Grandmaster Bill Superfoot Wallace, a legend, amazing human being too. I've had the chance to meet him a few times, as has Sensei Legacy and Sensei Suno. And as a matter of fact, the first time I met him, and Sensei Legacy and I were getting pictures taken with him, it was actually Sensei Prime who grabbed our phone and was taking pictures of us with him. So he met Shintani Sensei in 1977 when he tagged along with some friends to the dojo. That's how he got his introduction. He wasn't actually really too interested in karate, but his friends went, so he went. I know this because I read a great article that he wrote, and I'm going to pop that article down into the chat for anybody who wants to see it. His dojo's in St. Catharines, and it's been open for 36 years now. He has a lot of recognitions and awards. Some of the ones that I want to call to light are the Peter Kiolofi Memorial Award. He won that in 2001, 4, and 14. The Masters Cup Award in 2001 and 2002. Inducted into the Sports Karate Museum History General Award, 2017. Inducted into the Karate College Hall of Fame, also in 2017. Really interesting thing I want to call out is he cornered, I watched him actually, he cornered Bill Superfoot Wallace in Ottawa when he was fighting Sensei Sloki at Capital Conquest in 2019, which was supposed to be an exhibition fight, and it was an exhibition fight. But the one thing I want to say that I noticed right away is that after they touched gloves and the bell went, Grandmaster Wallace jabbed Sensei Sloki in the head really, really hard. I think just to set the tone that this can go whatever way we want it to go, right? And that was the same year that Sensei Legacy was inducted into the Black Belt Hall of Fame. You could see was one of the things I wanted to say for me. He has a great smile. When I see Sensei Prime, he's always smiling. He's always approachable. He's always friendly. But I also want to say, don't let that fool you. This guy's a real badass karate guy, and he'll kick your ass for sure. He'll hug you 1 second, and you'll be picking yourself up off the ground if you, what they say, fuck around and find out, right? So, as I said, we met at Capital Conquest, and we've continued to meet at different events. And as a matter of fact, Sensei Prime came to our event in May a number of years ago, and he instructed here in Kitchener on the mats, and we were really happy to have him here. He did a great job. I know the students in Legacy Shore and we talk about it. They now seek you out at Capital Conquest because they really like your teaching and what you have to do. My daughter was on your mat, and she's a really good kicker, and you taught her a couple of things too, which is great. Our paths have crossed often. I know our paths are going to cross again, probably in November. And we're really excited to have you here on the show, Sensei Prime. And thanks so much for coming on. The next question that I want to ask you is, we know your friends brought you, but what was it like when you were younger, when you went to the dojo? How did you grow up? And what was it about the dojo that made you stay there?
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. I was just the tag along guy. My buddies, my one friend actually did some judo previous to the karate club, and I just thought, oh, why not? We'll go and check it out. Now, we were really super lucky that the instructor of that dojo was Sensei Masaru Shintani. He did what a lot of the guys did back in the day, where he would to build his organization, he had rented halls in churches and legions and wherever he could find space, and he just traveled around from city to city, and really promoted his organization that way, just by the vast amount of people that he could get to. I think after seeing him move the very, very first time, it left such an impression. When we went in and met him, he was such a soft-spoken man, and he welcomed us right away. We just told him that we were here just to check things out, and he says, "Well, no problem. Sit down, watch." We were just in street clothes, so we weren't going to jump in. But I don't know how much I believe in auras and all that sort of thing, right? But man, this guy had something emulating, like just shining out of him. And then when he started moving, when he started counting, when he started punching, it was just like I was mesmerized. I was absolutely mesmerized. I don't know if we stayed for 10 minutes or an hour before we said, "Hey, we'll be back next week." But that was it. I was hooked. And we ended up the first year, probably about 10 or 12 of us joining. And I believe I was the only one who ever got an orange belt out of it. A couple of the other guys got a yellow belt, but that was as far as they went. I was I had to work hard. I was clumsy. At 15, I was probably about 135, 140 pounds and over 6 feet already, and I had no balance. You could blow me over. I was that uncoordinated. But I did work. I worked really, really hard because of seeing what was possible. I could, with Sensei Shintani teaching in St. Catharines, we had people from all over the Niagara region coming to that class. So although there was probably, say, 10 people from St. Catharines, there was probably 20 people from the Niagara region on any given night that were coming just to get that extra workout with him. So I saw a lot of people go through, and I just went, yeah, I want to move like that. I want to do that. One gentleman, Sensei Ray Poulin from Welland, he was at that time, I'd never seen anybody kick like he could. And he would just stand off the side on his warm up, and he would do the side kick, round kick, hook kick. And I looked at that and went, yeah, that's me. That's got to be me, right? I mean, it didn't matter to me at the beginning if it was called karate or taekwondo or kung fu. To me, it was kicking. Had to be kicking, right? So I just got very, very lucky that I started with a great instructor who taught great basic techniques and great values. Since he was more about or it was just as important to him to have good people as it was, having good, strong karate, and he instilled that. He instilled that, it doesn't matter what you can do physically. If you don't have a good heart and you don't have a good head, then he really didn't want anything to do with you. He would weed them out pretty quick. So just that whole package, that meant a lot to me when I started, and that just kept me going.
Two follow-up questions on that, Sensei Prime. Are you friends with any of those 12 guys still?
I don't see them anymore. No.
Okay. I just wondered if there was any digging it in there a little bit.
There is one person from the dojo back in the day. I was a yellow belt at the time. He was a blue belt. He'd already got a blue belt in Taekwondo, and he'd already changed over to karate. I met him in high school when I switched high schools. And, you can tell when a person moves right away that they're a martial artist. So we just hovered and we spoke to each other and said, oh, yeah, I go here, I go there. I said, so, well, why don't you come to my club and meet my instructor and do a class, and then I'll go to your club and do a class there. And he said, yeah, that's a great idea. Just, meet other martial artists. After he came to my club at the end of the night, he just said, we're not going to my club. We're coming back there. So that was it. And he became a really good black belt in the Shintani Karate Federation, and he became an OPP officer up in Owen Sound, and he's moved down to Port Colborne. So we don't see each other enough, even though we're only half an hour away from each other. But we were just chatting the other day that we're going to be setting up a lunch soon. So there's one person that I worked out with from back in the day at the original dojo that we still hang around.
Well, that's interesting that you said the original dojo, because that's something we don't delve into as much as I think we should. What was the original dojo like? Like, could you describe it for people? Like, what was it like? The training facility?
It was a party room at the bottom of a restaurant. It had a parquet floor that was about 12 by 12, and the rest of it was carpet. So you learn really, really quickly how to move or just carpet burn the bottom of your feet off. Most of the time it was clean, but not always. It was just one of those places that had a decent amount of space, and I believe actually that Hanshi Shintani got it for free. Yeah, so I mean it's not like there was all kinds of paraphernalia on the walls or anything like that. Nope, it was a dance hall.
Nice. And what was the typical class like with Sensei Shintani? Like what was?
Um, he really focused on basics. He really focused on Tai Sabaki, like total body movement. Uh, he did talk about speed. He talked about power. He constantly reminded us how important it was to have a really strong fist, have a strong body so that you could absorb impact. He was a great storyteller too. I mean, there were some nights, honest, we would go in, and if you asked the right question, you weren't even getting on the floor. He would talk for 2 hours. We had a few of those nights too, talking about the internment camps, the life that he had, the prejudices that he had to face, as a young man. When he was learning karate from Kitagawa, who he met in the internment camp, whose mother really didn't want him to hang around with, but he always said, "Boys will be boys. This is what we got to do." He taught him how to be a man, so to speak, because he was defending his life almost daily. He said that some of the training things that they did, he would never bestow upon anybody, knocking bark off trees and crazy things like that, right? Things that can really cripple you. So, he looked at that and understood those values. But I'm glad that he found a way to instill them in us without having to go through the same sorts of things that he went through, right? And he as there was always a lesson about humility, and there was always a lesson about just the way you should be treating people. He was very opinionated when it came to people that broke the law, or people that were womanizers, or things like that. He was very much on that line of of right and wrong. So he would include that in our teachings, and I think we do that. A lot of the dojos do that. I think we try to instill good values with people. That's one thing that I don't think has changed in martial arts, regardless of whether you're the 300 member dojo or the 20 member dojo. I think that those values are important to pass along and continue and instill.
Sensei, I'm glad you took that turn, because I was going to ask you to elaborate a little bit more. Can you talk a little bit more about some of the values that your sensei taught, and maybe some of the values that you teach today at your dojo?
Um, yeah, helping each other, working with each other. We typically have conversations. Even in our kids class, we start out. We start them young and talk about the kids that were here last year need to be the example for the kids that are here this year. We've already, we start in September. We give the kids July and August off, and we do our own thing for the adults, traveling around and get what we can in. So we kind of go with the school year with our kids program, and we've already had the discussion about how important it is to help each other along, and it's going to be, even though it's an individual sport, it's something that you're only going to get better if you have people helping you. That was really important. Sensei Shintani talked about like being able to read people and pushing to their limits without hurting them. And again, that's something that I think is still very, very important today. Not everyone's going to be a rock star, right? I mean, as you said earlier, you might have 7 students that are in your club that are at an elite level. But again, they're not going to get there without help. And they're certainly not going to get there, and you're not going to have help if you're hurting all your students. We heard of those dojos too when we were younger, and I don't. You hear hearsay, and unfortunately, you don't always investigate. You just hear it, so you stay away. And it's it might have been that's just the fact that, hey, those guys are fighting full contact, and maybe 3 or 4 people went in and weren't expecting that, and they just say, oh, they're a bunch of bullies. So I don't know, but that's the difference between karate is the art and karate, kickboxing, whatever you want to call it, as the sport, right? There's different levels of the sport, and you have to adapt to the person in front of you. But yeah, again, I said it before, Sensei Shintani didn't care how good you were physically. If you weren't a good person, he didn't really want anything to do with you, and he made it very obvious.
Hey, Sensei, I'd like to punt that over to Sensei Legacy, because we have a pretty ethical dojo when it comes. What did Shihan Chapman say? He said to me once, "Your sensei runs a very tight ship." That's what he said. Sensei Legacy runs a very tight ship. The values of Legacy Shorinru Sensei in the dojo, how did you come up with them? Was it learned? What ones did you decide on your own that this was something you wanted all your students to have?
Generally, you know, um, you're learning how to use your body to kill somebody. And I know that doesn't sound right, but you have that ability. And if you don't know the difference between right or wrong, or even if you have the ability to defend other persons, you also have to have the ability to not get pulled into a fight that really means nothing just for the sake of fighting or for the sake of trying your karate. So um, values are very important. It's just like if you go to this is probably more on the American side than on the Canadian side, but a lot of people have guns, and you see a lot of people use them wrongly, and so it's something like that. If you want somebody who has a gun, you would hope that they would understand the difference between using it properly and not using it. After all, we are the ones that are teaching them how to do this. So interwoven into the fabric of the martial arts, you have to have common sense.
Thanks, Sensei. I want to change gears a little bit, because we've talked about Shintani Sensei a lot, but you also trained and train with Grandmaster Bill Superfoot Wallace a lot. And so just how did you meet Grandmaster Wallace? How was that introduction? And yeah, just tell us about that, how that transpired. And you're his representative in Canada, like you represent that system in Canada. So
Yeah. Um, I met Mr. Wallace and Mr. Lewis, Mr. Joe Lewis, at the same time in 1992. Black Belt Magazine was advertising this karate college. Um, and there was a few of us that, well, actually, me and my buddy, the cop, uh, were talking about going, and I had just taken in a couple of Ronin black belts from another club that had just closed down, and they were looking for something, and a couple of guys joined up with us, and they had seen the same ad, and it was the day that I took those two guys, Walt Fast and Henry Bergen, to meet Hanshi Shintani, particularly being black belts from another organization coming into ours. I had already, you can tell right away, you know when people are good or not. So I took them at the first opportunity I could to meet Hanshi Shintani. But so we're driving back to St. Catharines from Hamilton, and they mentioned that, oh yeah, we were looking at this karate college ad, right? And I'm like, no kidding, we were just talking about that. So next thing you know, a couple months later, we're driving down to Virginia, and obviously the two big names were Joe Lewis and Bill Wallace. Jeff Smith was one of the original founders, but he wasn't there the first year. Jerry Beasley was the coordinator, but that's where we met them. And there's absolutely no doubt in your mind when you see people of that caliber. Again, you know right away that you need to seek them out. You need to get close to them, and you need to find out as much as you can about them. You know, people have asked me before. It's like, how do you become friends with Bill Wallace? Well, you approach him, you talk to him, and that the conversations. It went from, believe me, it went from like, oh my God, here's my idol, right? To here now he's my mentor. Now he's my friend, and still my mentor, and sometimes still my idol too. I got to say that. But I spent a lot of time with both of those gentlemen. As a matter of fact, I did a very short stint of kickboxing. I was already past my prime, although it's hard to believe, when I got into the full contact. But it was Joe Lewis who talked me into doing it, right? He told me, he says, you've got what it takes. I think you should do it, and you'll regret it if you don't. Well, when you put it that way, how can you not do it, right? You got Joe Lewis in your corner, so it's like, well, that's pretty cool. For a couple of years there, and this was still kind of mid 90s, I guess. I just traveled wherever they were going. If they were in driving distance, it didn't, like 8 hours, I'm calling driving distance. I would go and work out with them. I mean, even after the first year, I met them in 92, and I had them at my club in 93. I brought them up and said, like, hey, this is what we're doing. A lot of people being, in the Shintani Karate Federation, a very traditional style, some people had questioned it. So I just called Hanshi Shintani and said, hey, this is what I'm doing. What do you think about this? And he's like, absolutely, go for it. He says, you got to continue to learn from everybody, absolutely everybody. So, I had his blessing, so there was nothing holding me back. We just, I tried to incorporate everything they did. And, when I talked before about having control and knowing who your partners were, I was doing full contact kickboxing and I was doing point fighting at the same time. And I wasn't getting disqualified from the point tournaments. I know the difference, right? You should know the difference if you're good, right? And I'm not saying I'm great or anything like that. I'm just saying I know the difference. I know I can punch, I know I can kick, and I know when I have to hit, and I know when I have to pull. So that's those were really, really good lessons, differentiating between one and the other there. And yeah, it's been a great journey. I made a really, really, really big mistake probably one of the biggest mistakes in my martial arts career, by not going through the grading under Joe Louis. He talked to me many times about it when he was starting to build his organization. I mean, he always had our spattering of black belts around the country, and that followed him. That they had a certificate from him, but he really wanted to promote the organization, the Joe Louis Fighting Systems. And we talked about it. We talked seriously about it. And, I said to him, I just didn't feel comfortable because the miles that were in between us, and it didn't always have the opportunities to work out with him. And it was something that, maybe I messed it up in my own mind. Sensei Shintani talked about how important it was to have a black belt. I mean, sure, your black belt is a personal milestone in karate, and it's the goal, right? And when people first start, that's what they're thinking. They're not thinking, oh yes, we'll take it a step at a time. No, they're thinking, I got to get my black belt. So it was really important to me that I could represent him properly before I wore the black belt. And I knew that we would still be friends, whether I had it or not. And he used to, joke with me about, the katas, and, he'd say, I'll show you my katas. And, he'd go through all the different the movements that he's put together, the kickboxing movements that he would call his kata. And I remember the day that he passed away. I had such a hollow feeling. Not only did the world lose a great person, but I realized at that point in time, I could have been graded by him, but not for me, to represent him. That's what it was about. I got my black belt from Sensei Shintani. I'm representing the Shintani Karate Federation. So after that happened, I was still working out with Mr. Wallace a lot. That's when we had serious conversations about, okay, you've got all kinds of people from my organization that have been working out with you for a bunch of years. Let's put something together. And I would really feel honored if I could test with you and bring some of my friends along that and we set that up a number of years ago. And again, it was I looked at it. I hope it doesn't sound like a selfish thing. I looked at it as it shows what I've done through the years. It tells you who I've trained with, but to me, more importantly than anything else, it's representing him, right? He's the one who's giving it to me.
Listen, Sensei Prime, I'm a proponent of this. When people say, who says you're a 7th degree black belt in Shorinru? I say, my teacher is Hanshi Gary Legacy. Have you ever heard of him? And then they say, okay, this guy's a 7th degree black belt in karate. And when people say, who says you're a 4th degree black belt in Iaido? I said, there's this guy in the United States. His name is Nicholas Swino. He's my teacher. You ever heard of him? They're like, he's a 4th degree. Nobody's going to question your ranks with the teachers that you have. And if they do, they should go throw themselves off a bridge, because those people they're not rank factories. They don't just churn things out. You're getting graded by the cream of the crop out there, not the everyday sensei. I'm not saying you get graded by the everyday sensei. Your relationship is the most important thing, but people know who your teachers are and know that your teachers don't give away ranks. And I think it's really cool that Joe Louis wanted to actually grade you. That's, whether he did or he didn't, that's still a feather in your cap and speaks to your character.
Yeah, I owe a lot to both Mr. Lewis and Mr. Wallace, and the fact that I'd already been around karate martial arts for a number of years, and I was hitting one of those stale periods. And when I met them, it was just bright green light again, right? And that's the importance thing. We talked just a little bit before we went live here, about seminars and how important they are. I mean, that's to me, like they're inspiring. People are out there sharing, and You can't do everything, but you look around and go like, wow, there's a lot of really, really good stuff here. And, you know, for us in our area to be so close to Ottawa with Hanshi Teddy and his capital conquest that he puts on in November, man, we're lucky that we can attend something like that, because that is one premier martial arts event. And, you know, everybody's of the same mindset there. Everybody is all about sharing. You know, and you know, you mentioned earlier about Hanshi Legacy getting on the floor. That was one of the things that Sensei Shintani talked about. You know, was like never become the teacher who does not interact, who does not get on the floor, who does not continue to learn. And I took that to heart. You know, my club's been going since you know, 87, and I hate talking about those dates sometimes because it does date us, right? But the whole time that I have been teaching, I have been a student almost 50% of the time. I teach one night and have one of our black belts teach another night, and we rotate through schedules. And you know, I think it's important even during the warm up that we get different people doing the warm up, so that we're getting different muscle groups, because everybody likes doing different things and that sort of thing. But now, Sensei Shintani told me to everybody, you know, always be a student. So that's what I am, you know, always, always, always. And
Love
you
it.
ran a great class yourself at the Capital Conquest that I was not going to miss.
Thank you so much for coming to my mat. I really appreciate it. Um, I want to ask Sensei Suino and Sensei Lacey a couple questions because they have also very prolific instructors. I'll start with you, Sensei Suino. How was Yamaguchi Sensei? Was he encouraging of you? Obviously, Sato Sensei and he were good friends, so that would be fine. But how was he if you wanted to train with other Iaido instructors or in other places? Was he closed, or did he encourage you to go out and do other training? Or you just didn't want to because
uh, uh, Interesting you ask. He knew, 'cause I came right. I was training in jujitsu and judo before I went to Yamaguchi Sensei, and also in Kyudo, and both Sato Sensei and Yamaguchi Sensei made it known that they thought I was doing too many martial arts. Not that they were discouraging me from going to train with other people, but that I was focusing on too many martial arts. And so they would both bring me to events where a lot of high-ranking senseis would get together and let me be exposed to that training. Um, but when I got my Shodan in Kyudo, they said, yeah, that's enough of that, right? They encouraged me to stop, so I did. And at one time I asked the Yamaguchi Sensei if I could join his kendo classes. And he said, no, he said, you got judo. That's your combative. You don't need kendo too, right? It's too much. You're not going to be good at any of that. So it wasn't that he was jealous of me training with other people. He and Sato Sensei were both committed to the idea that you can only do so much and be good at it. And so, yeah, that was their point of view.
thank you. Since Lacey, you've had 4 teachers, mostly because those teachers either passed or well, they passed away or moved away. How was there any of them that were like, no, go out and learn, or any of them that were don't go out and learn?
Everybody, I chose my senseis. I was consciously, or I was quite aware of what I was looking for, and all those guys were great senseis. And uh, if your sensei doesn't want you to train with other persons so you can become better, possibly better than your own sensei, which is their goal. That's how you leave martial arts in, in a better way, or still in the classical sense, is that you make your students better than yourself, so that instead of dropping the quality, you're upping the quality. That's what I call your duty, right? Also, I like to say that Sensei Shintani and I knew each other. You'll know what I mean by this. Like, he was the first Japanese man that I ever met who had black curly hair. Normally, they all have really straight hair, right? And he was different in that way. A very classical martial artist, for sure. And Sensei Sandoval, you know, you trained with him, with me. He would let you go out there and training with other persons, and what the other persons would do is try to steal you away from your teacher. It's, you want to build themselves up or get good names. But I never, once I chose my sensei, I've 100% committed myself to or her. But I never did have any lady senseis. But I committed myself and I did what they said. Like, I try to be the best student, and that way I would make myself better.
Thanks, Sensei. For me, Sensei Prime, I'll share with you that, you know, Suino Sensei never has discouraged me from training with other people. In EI, like, so I've gone and trained with the Canadian EI Association. And I remember I did a tournament, and then they came to me and said, "Oh, they want you to grade tomorrow morning." And I said, "I can't, I don't want to grade. Like, I'm just here to do the tournament." And they said, "No, the Japanese instructors are insisting that you grade tomorrow." So I'm like, I have to ask my sensei. So I called Suino Sensei and said, "This is what they're doing." And he's like, "I don't care. Just don't piss them off. Make them happy. Just do what they tell you to do." So then I went and did that. And with Sensei Legacy, I always come to him and there'll be, maybe this big name that's coming to teach in this community, and I'll go, and he never says no. Sometimes he'll say, "I don't think you're gonna like that seminar as much as you're excited about it." And usually he's very right when I come back and he's like, "Well, what did you think of that one?" You were right, Sensei. It was not great. But the really cool thing is what I've always tried to do is make sure they were part of the decision before I went, not telling them after the fact. I think that's the one thing you said that I think was really good, is that you went to Shintani Sensei and said, "Is this okay?" And he said, "Yeah, it's totally okay." Right? Like, that I think is the important point that we need to drive home. I want to take this in another direction a little bit now, Sensei Prime. And I was I was watching some of your videos on YouTube today, just prepping for this show. Um, and one of the things you said in one of the videos, and you went on about it, was you talked about all the health benefits, but you said karate's not just for kids, right? And so I wonder if you could speak, because I think today that's one of those things that a lot of people, when they think of karate, they think of the Karate Kid and little kids and things and it is for kids, but it's for everybody. And so I wonder if you could just speak about that. And before you do, I wondered if you could just talk about, so we've talked about how you met Bill Superfoot Wallace, Grandmaster Wallace, and Shintani Sensei. How did you start teaching? Like, that's something often people don't talk about. It's like you just pop out of the ground as a sensei one day and like there's students there. How did that transpire?
Well, that's exactly how it transpired. Sensei Shintani was at the point where he had stopped teaching at the individual dojos, and he was traveling all across the countries because his organization was getting so big that he really didn't have time to do the regular weekly workouts. So, he'd spend a couple of weeks up north, he'd spend a couple of weeks out west. He was in very, very high demand in his teaching. So he became more of like the black belt instructor. So, and he would make sure that his black belts were doing what they should be doing, and giving them their time, showing his support. A lot of people, we built huge organizations out in Alberta because just a couple of guys from Ontario that were exposed to Sensei Shintani moved for work or whatever reasons and opened up their own dojos. So Sensei Shintani stopped teaching in St. Catharines, and we had a couple of guys that tried to keep the club going, but either they didn't have the passion for it, or they were too busy with their personal lives or whatever. They just stopped teaching. And here I am, a brown belt, going like, "Nah, this is wrong, man. I got to do something here." So I opened my first club as a brown belt. I called Sensei Shintani and I said, "Hey, this is the situation. Would you let me do that?" And he's like, Absolutely. Again, you know, he was never holding back anybody from anything. Um, However, I did reach out to one of the other black belts that I was training with at the hall, but hadn't seen in years. I knew he was teaching kids, and I called him and I said, "Listen, I'm going to start an adult class. Are you interested?" And I didn't even get the words out of my mouth. He's like, "Yep." But he was just teaching so many kids that he just wanted that adult factor again. So, you know, again, it's never a one person. It's a team effort as far as I'm concerned when it comes to stuff like that. Um, the reason I put that video out there, and I put it out there now a couple of years in a row, was, you know, I look at the dynamics of karate, and you know, people just think that karate is for kids. I don't know what it's like in your area, but you know, we have a harder time, much harder time getting, you know, like the 16 and up, right? I mean, I would love to have like 10 students, male, female, don't care, but just hungry, athletic students, and just work out and travel with them and teach them. And, you know, if they wanted to fight full contact, I still think I got a little bit in me to work with them and that, but they're just not there. And, you know, I talked to some of the parents and try to get them to come out with their kids or come to the class and say, yeah, you know, it's kind of a kid thing and everything like that. And I'm like, man, no, it's not. It's not a kid thing. It's very much an everybody thing. So I was just trying to put the message out there saying, like, listen, you put your kids in a karate club because of all the benefits, and they can name the benefits, you know, confidence and athleticism, and the physical portion, the mental, all that stuff. Everybody knows all that stuff. Well, why does it stop at 14? let's let's get some of the adults out there and have some fun. So we're actually we have a few more this year, which is great. But still, I'd love to have, like, you know, just put 50 hungry adults in front of me that just want to work out and let's just have some fun.
Love
And you
that.
know, it's not that I don't mind. It's not that I don't mind teaching, you know, like new people and white belts and stuff like that. As a matter of fact, I'm doing this again this year. What I did at Capital Conquest last year was I advertised my class as a kicking class for people who struggle kicking. And, you know, it's kind of easy to, you know, teach people who are already there, you know, it's a different type of class because now you're talking, you know, setups and different strategies and stuff like that. But some people, you know, they have physical limitations or mental block or whatever, but mostly physical limitations. But you got to work around that. So I want to be able to help those people. I want to be able to get them to at least get their knee up and be able to kick the belt knot, whatever it takes. Working angles, working, you know, whatever it is. Can't give away everything. We're gonna do that at my next seminar.
Love that. Love that. Um, so I want to ask you now about, you know, I think when it comes to Shintani and Wado Ryu, I don't want to say it's known, but people know what Wado Ryu karate is. I
Mhm.
don't think a lot of people actually know what the Superfoot system is. Like they don't, and you teach that as well. So you teach karate, but you're the representative of the Superfoot system. And
Yeah.
I think this is building on what you just said, helping people kick. Everybody knows, you know, that Grandmaster Wallace had the one uh, fused knee, and but what is that system? Like when you go into that system, what are you going to be learning and what are you teaching people and how do they progress?
Well, what we're trying to do is emulate the fighting career of Bill Superfoot Wallace. He was a sideways fighter. He did that to protect his right knee. So and fortunate that he's left-handed. So to keep his power side forward and his power leg forward, uh, it just worked out well, made a lot of sense. But it's basically a breakdown of the anatomy of Bill Wallace. This is how I fought. This is the physical part of it. there's so much more to Bill Wallace than just kicking. I mean, you look at him, and I mean, he obviously he's so talented. I mean, I just tell people he's the guy who invented kicking, right? I mean, it's just he was just that good. He can move his foot like you move your hand. He has got that. He's that precise. Joe Corley, in one of your earlier episodes of Punch Kick Choke Chat, said it, and he went by it really, really quick. I don't know how many people picked up on this, but Bill Wallace had an innate ability to adapt and adapt very, very quickly to what the other person was doing, and he would counter it. So, and I've asked Bill before, about strategy. And Bill basically says his strategy is just to read people and do what he does well. He's only got 3 kicks. He's only got the front hand, and not a lot to it, but you can't figure out which angle it's coming from. And he says, I don't even know what I'm going to throw. So how are you going to figure it out? Right? He's just so good at reacting to people. I don't know that you can teach that. That's something that you got to pick up, but we certainly talk about it. We certainly talk about when you step this way, you're going to see the person move here. When you step that, right? So it's very, very reactionary. So, I mean, that's obviously at a higher level. But to teach the basics of the kicking and to teach proper momentum, proper chamber, that's a real big focus. And we were talking again earlier about the fact that when Mr. Wallace teaches, it's a lot of repetition. You're throwing, if you're working out with him for a year, you're throwing a million kicks, and that's all there is to it. And when he talks about his setting up, he's just so sneaky in the way he can set you up. And obviously his flexibility helps. But if you go to a Bill Wallace seminar, you're rarely going to see kicks above the belt. And he does that on purpose. He'll demonstrate, he'll show you kicking to the head and so on and so forth. But when he's doing the actual drills in his seminars, he's doing them all waist level. He's doing that so that everybody can participate. Right? I mean, if he was saying, okay, we're gonna start doing repetitions of hook side round, and I expect this one up here and the next one to go down low, and when the person goes down low, you're gonna go over top. Who's gonna do that? That's a small percentage of people, right? So it's great when you see it, when you have the students that can do it, and you've got the flexibility and the physical ability to do that, but not everybody does. So again, to my point about seeing what a person can do and working with that individual, that's what we're trying to promote. How can you, within your physical realm, move like him and set up like him? It might look a little different. That's fine. That's why he always says, he sticks to the program and tells you to adapt his stuff to your stuff. He's very, very open about that. He's never a hard line saying, no, you got to do it this way.
So are those 2 separate programs? Like, are you teaching 2 separate things, or are you teaching Wado Ryu and then incorporating some of the Superfoot system into that?
Exactly. Yeah. Wado is my base style. It will always be my base style. And Mr. Wallace knows that the Superfoot system it's an add-on. The only thing that really makes a style, I think, is like some of the basic techniques in the kata. Right? I mean, a punch is a punch, a kick is a kick, a block is a block. It doesn't matter if it's Shorin-ryu, Wado-ryu, Goju-ryu, whatever. It is what it is. Or, freestyle, kickboxing, sport karate, whatever. It's the katas and that sort of thing, and that's why I was saying earlier about Joe Louis. His katas were basically, these are the boxing combinations that I work, and the switch stepping and so on and so forth. And Mr. Lewis also said it's not the style that makes the man, it's the man that makes the style, right? So you can call it a name, because actually Sensei Shintani's original style was Shorin-ryu, or as close to you could get as Shorin-ryu. That's what Kitagawa would have called his style. He said it was Shorin-ryu, or he would have called it kumite, simply kumite. Both Bill Wallace and Joe Louis are also original Shorin-ryu practitioners as well, and they don't look anything alike. So and Joe Louis, as much as he would kind of bash the katas and stuff like that, there's some old videos out there of him doing katas, and he was very, very serious about him, and getting deep down and personal with him. I'm like, okay, really, tell me, why do you hate them so much? And he says, it's not that I hate them. He says, I truly appreciate them. He says, I hate what they're doing with them today.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's yeah. Did
Suna
I answer the question?
Suna Sensei, I think you have a question.
Yeah, Sensei. Were you have you had opportunities to spar with Bill Wallace?
Not for real, thank God.
Right, but I mean, what's it like? What's it like to do training sparring with him?
I've been an uke more so than anything else, but I think I know how he moves, and then it's just you watch him from the side and you think, how could you not block that? But when you stand in front of him, you go, oh my God, what happened, right? Don the Dragon Wilson did a couple of exhibition matches with Bill Wallace, and he said, in my professional career, nobody has ever kicked me in the head. When I fought Bill Wallace, he kicked me every time he wanted to. That's the difference right there, right?
Amazing.
Yeah.
How about Joe Louis? Did you ever have a chance to move around with him at all?
Yes, yeah, more with pad work and stuff like that. But yeah, got the opportunity to move around with him. Obviously, you watch your line because he'd already been retired for a long time. But I one of the best lessons I ever got. It was. We were coming back from over the sea. I brought him up for a seminar, and it was April of 1995. And he wanted to watch the fights that night. Larry Holmes was fighting, Bruce Seldon was fighting, Julio Cesar was fighting. Anyway, we're driving home, and it's getting late already, and we got a full day ahead of us. So I want to get home. And we go in my back door, and he looks downstairs, and like my wife and my daughter are already sleeping. It's probably 1:30-ish already, and he sees my heavy bag at the bottom of the stairs. So he just walks downstairs, and we started giving me a lesson of how to move, and instead of staying in front of a heavy bag and just pounding and pounding, he talked about your footwork and moving 2 steps left and then 3 steps right, and the distancing and everything like that. And he was starting to hit the bag pretty good. And I said, Mr. Lewis, I said, world champion or not, I said, my wife is up there and she will come down and kick your butt. Right? So let's stop the rafters from shaking here, right? So he looked over and saw my double end ball. He says, okay, we'll go over here. So we started working on the double end ball, right? But yeah, when I was getting ready for the ring to step in for the first time, I hooked up with him a couple of times and really worked our distancing and timing. It was at a seminar in Rochester where the owner of the school was sick, and I knew the guy is a really, really nice guy, Jeff Bertolo. And I would never try to outshine or take the stage away from the instructors at the school just because I know these guys, right? Like I do more to try and stay in the back. But Jeff knew that I had a relationship with Joe, so he says, "Listen," he says, "you got to be the Yuki today, right? So Joe beat you up, sort of deal, right?" And I said, "Hey, I'm all good for it, right?" At the end of that seminar, he came over to me and kind of whispered in my ear. He says, he says, your timing, you've got it, right? He says, it's time. Let's get in there. Nothing holding you back, sort of deal, right? So that encouragement was priceless.
Sensei Prime, it is 9:40 on the dot. At 9:50, we will be done your 10 questions. Sensei Shino will ask you the questions. We ask you to answer as impulsively as you like. You don't have to, but you can also elaborate as much as you want. But when the 10-minute timer goes off, we will be done.
All right.
Sensei Prime, what is the most effective move in your martial arts arsenal?
Front kick or side kick, depending on which way I'm standing.
Who is the most influential martial artist in your life?
I have three, and we've been talking about them all night. Hanshi Masaru Shintani, Joe Louis, and Bill Superfoot Wallace.
Who do you think is the most influential martial artist of all time, and why?
Well, it certainly had to be at the beginning Bruce Lee. There's no doubt about it. He popularized martial arts. He was charismatic. There's no doubt about it. I don't think he was the best martial artist, but as far as popular, you got to give it to him.
What excites you most about the next 5 years of your martial arts training?
Getting through the pain on this left shoulder.
Oh, no.
I'll be really excited when that's gone. I had my right shoulder done 2 years ago, and I'm working through the pain on my left. Hopefully I don't need surgery of it. But no, I just, you know what? I'm very fortunate that my body is held up pretty darn good. When I blew out my right shoulder, I thought, well, what can I do here for the next 6 months where I'm not even allowed to throw a punch or do a push-up? So I got back into a stretching routine, and I am back nearly to where I was when I was in my early 20s. I'm about 3 inches away from doing a full side split again. So that will be my goal, to get back there.
Nice. Very cool. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say to you when you get there?
Wow, that's a good one. I like to think that the world is about giving and taking, and I hope that I'm giving more than I'm taking, and I'm hoping that that's what he can tell me.
Do you have a favorite film or TV martial artist, whether they're actually a martial artist or not?
I think that changes from year to year. I was truly a big fan of Jean-Claude Van Damme, a great kicker. Go figure. I think in his early films were pretty amazing. I mean, Bloodsport, just anybody of that era, you can't forget about that movie, right? Unfortunately, it happens, later in their career, they just pump out movies, and they lose that vibe that they had. But you know what? He's a nice guy too. I know he went through a period where he wasn't such a nice guy, but he got straightened out pretty good by one of his bodyguards too, which is a true story. So I'm not saying anything that I shouldn't. Really, really liked Steven Seagal again when he first started. Unfortunately, a lot of his fame went to his head. He probably was that person before he started his movies. But you didn't see it at the beginning of his career. But as far as the quality of his first few films, they were pretty amazing. I think I like them, his style more so because it was the way they were choreographed was more realistic, right? I mean, I'm just not a real big fan of the Sunday afternoon matinee, audio dubbed films and TV shows. But yeah, that's those were the ones that that truly inspired me. And I'm just waiting for, you know, the next guy to come along. Chuck Norris obviously was in there, and, you know, great. Bill had a great role in A Force of One, right? But you know, the guys that stand out, they stood out because they had that on film charisma.
100%, 100%. Do you have a martial artist, living or dead, of all time that you wish you could train with the most?
Can it be more than one?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I would like, I mean, obviously, if I had the opportunity to train with Sensei Shintani again today, because he's been gone for, you know, over 20 years. He saw the direction that I was taking. But I also assured him that, you know, I knew where home was. Doesn't matter where I go to play, you know, I always knew where home was. And I just, it would be great to know that he knows that I've never lost my initial foundation.
That's great. He's the top number one, but you said you alluded to the
Yeah,
fact
no,
you might
I'm going
want
to
to
leave
pick
it at
more than
one.
one.
We'll just
Okay.
leave it at one. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
After the words came out, that's
Got it. Yeah,
there you
man.
go.
Yeah, man. If everyone in the world could have the greatest benefit that you've gotten from your martial arts training, whether they train or not, what benefit would they get?
The ability, and this is something that you know, I still work at, but the ability to step back and analyze, you know, trying not to overreact, trying not to make a big deal out of everything. And, you know, like I think a lot of people, you know, have different anxieties and different tolerance levels and so on. And, you know, I'm not always the cool as a cucumber guy either, you know, but I can sit back and think about, you know, the different lessons over the years, and be able to actually, like, just breathe, calm. All right, let's, everything will have a happy ending if you want it to have a happy ending.
Love it. All right. The last two questions come as a pair. What is your greatest achievement? What is your greatest regret?
I'd have to say greatest achievement is just, you know, it's got to be the number of people that I think I've influenced positively, you know, my students, my club. If I look at an individual type of thing, I can tell you what I thought was really cool. And it was, you know, based on my self-defense skill set. Was we got invited down to Fort Bragg to work with a special warfare group down there. And, you know, when you're doing any of these types of things, you got to know somebody. You got to, you know, you got to have an in. And, you know, one of our guys down in the States had an in, and he called me and asked me if I was willing to do this. And we went down there and we trained a whole lot of the military. And I think if anything that I showed them, you know, were to save their life, that that would be a really, really cool accomplishment. After we went down there the first time, they specifically requested us to come back. That's when I knew that, like, wow, right? Like, being in front of them once, when you know somebody, you got the in, that's great. But for them to specifically ask for this group to return, man, that blew me away. That was really cool.
I don't regret. I don't want to run out of time before we get your answer.
Yeah, regrets. You know what? No, I don't think I have a regret. I think most of my decision, I'm a very anal person. I'm a planner by my job, my day job, right? So I'm very anal when it comes to that. My wife will tell you that too. But no, the only thing that I think about sometimes was, I wish I had an opportunity to start in the full contact career when I was younger. I was too old. I was already in my mid-30s, right? And so I was doing it just as an experience. I wanted to show that, you know, good traditional karate can still be good in the ring. And I think I did that. But I think back, man, if I would have started younger, where could it have gone? Right. So it's not a regret. It's just it's a wish. A regret. It would have been a regret if I would have had the opportunity in my face and I turned it down. I didn't. I just didn't have the opportunity. So
Look at this guy, man. 19 seconds on the clock left. Couldn't be,
Oh, so
couldn't be
sweet.
closer to 10 minutes than that.
you said nobody went over, so that
Nobody went over.
had to stick to it.
If, well, since we put that time limit on there, right? Some of our folks in the past have definitely gone on a bit. But I think if you give me these 10 again, I'm going to try to lure our guests into a sense of false security and try to get them to go over. Thank you so much, Sensei. We'll turn it back to Randy and go, into our final section here. But I just want to say the closest thing I have to regret in martial arts is the same as yours, that I didn't pursue competitive judo at a world-class level more aggressively when I was young enough to do it. It didn't come on my radar,
Yeah.
Yep.
I want to delve into that regret a little bit. And the question that I have for you, Sensei Prime, is you know yourself now. You know yourself when you were in your 30s and you were kickboxing, and you know yourself when you were in your 20s. How do you think you would have done?
Well, let's say I was lighter than Joe Louis, so I wouldn't have had to fight him, and I was heavier than Bill Wallace, so I wouldn't have had to fight him. So I probably would have done okay.
That's a great answer.
I mean, respectfully though, is there anybody that you think like really would have liked to have stood across from this person in a competitive match?
You know what? Putting the competitive hat on, when I was younger, I would have stood in front of anybody. Not saying I would win. I'm just saying I would have done it.
Love it. Love that. We don't have a lot of time, so I will, because we're down to time is real, as we say. But one thing I just want to circle back to fairly quickly was teaching, right? And one of the questions I have for you, because you're bolting on, if I could say it that way, the Superfoot system into Shintani Sensei's system. How do you assess your students? Do they grade simultaneously? Do you just say how do you assess this situation for promotion?
Well, as far as grading in both systems, there is different curriculum. So when we're working Shintani Wado Kai, we have a grading curriculum and we stick to that. I mean, we train that with our black belt grading structure. It's on our website. So I take that and I make sure that my students are 100% prepared for that. And obviously in traditional karate, you've got the katas. So, you've either got that or you don't. You don't go for your grading. As far as the Superfoot system, it's more based on attributes because you don't have something like a kata where you can say, okay, you got to put 20 moves together and make it happen. So when I say the attributes, it's quite simply that, and it doesn't have to be the head, but the techniques have got to be there. The chamber, the setup, the shuffle steps, there's terminology for all the different setups that he does. And, you have to be somewhat proficient at that. And when I do my sparring these days, it's just a combination of both, right? There's, you're not breaking out into a kata when you're sparring, right? So whatever works. Sometimes I stand forward and more traditional karate or boxing, and sometimes I'm sideways, right? So there's advantages to both the different defenses, different offenses. Just try and mix it up as much as I can so that the other person is thinking about what I'm doing. Because if they're thinking about what I'm doing, that's giving me at least a second advantage.
Thank you for that answer. And thank you for tonight. What we do now, Sensei Prime, is we go around the horn. We're going to start with Sensei Legacy, go to Sensei Suino. I'll give some thoughts. You'll get the final word of how you want to close the show out. And then we say good night and we kill the feed. So Sensei Legacy, what do you want to say about our time tonight with Sensei Prime?
I really enjoyed it, mainly because three of the persons that you admire the most: Shintani Sensei, Superfoot Wallace, and the world champion. So it was nice to be able to follow your years in martial arts. And just thinking, are you going to Capital Conquest this year?
Oh, 100%. I had plans even last year that I was going this year, but more so, my current instructor, who is the chief instructor in the Shintani Karate Federation, is being inducted into the Canadian Black Belt Hall of Fame since he Ron Matty. So there's absolutely no way I'd be missing that.
Yeah. All right, then I guess I'll be seeing you at that dinner because I also have a student
Oh, wonderful.
who's going to be inducted. Okay, thank you very much for being on our show. It was a great time.
Thank you.
Patrino, what do you want to say about our time with Sensei Prime?
Man, love this conversation. Sensei, thank you so much. I have to say, and I kind of echo what Hanshi said, your ability to bring to life the stories of Shintani Sensei, of Superfoot Wallace and Joe Louis is just amazing. I mean, I realize you were talking about yourself, but as you reached into the stories of those guys, you just brought them to life. And as somebody who has known of all of them and watched them from a distance for years, it was really gratifying to hear the stories brought to life that way, your reverence for them, and the fact that you exemplify what it means to be a faithful student in the martial arts. That's a powerful thing to come out of this conversation. I'm really grateful for you to bring that to light with us. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
I write a lot of copious notes. It's harder to write those notes when I'm actually trying to ask the questions too. But I liked our right off the hop when you said nonprofit, and it wasn't really about being a nonprofit, but it was really just about making sure the values are upheld in the various systems, and that I'm going to paraphrase that people aren't doing things for material reasons. Let's just say it that way. Whether that be food or money or a new car or a new house, the art has to come first. So it was nice to kick the conversation off. Stuff like don't ask to be graded. Don't like these are not things you do. As Suino said, I liked. I was very engrossed with you talking about Shintani Sensei, about his aura and the way he moves, and Sensei Legacy might not like this, but that's the reason why I stayed in karate. Because when I went in the dojo the first time, I just watched the way Sensei Legacy was doing everything, and I was like, man, I really wish I could be like this. Like this would be something really cool to be able to do. So I have that kindred thing. It was nice to hear you talk about Shintani Sensei. Um, you said one thing that stuck out is pushing people to their limits without hurting them, right? And that you could full contact kickbox or point fight. I think that's really good. I try really hard to do that. Sometimes it doesn't work out so well. There's some oopses along the way, but I'll keep working on it, Sensei Prime, to do that. I think it's really cool because actually I remember reading in Black Belt magazine about karate college. This is even before I was in karate, but I just would get the magazines and read them and thinking that would be really cool to be able to go to a school where you just do karate, right? Like you just do martial arts. And I think it's really cool that you went to Virginia. You just went and you wanted to do this thing. So you went there and you met these people and you formed these lifelong relationships with them. And you're all the better for it. And so are your students. You mentioned the regret about not grading with Joe Louis. It's a good regret to have, but I mean, proof's in the pudding, right? So I'm sure the things he showed you, you're still showing other people. I also like that when you were training with those people, and this is a lesson for everybody that they should take away, your house was Shintani, Sensei Shintani. Like that's where you lived. That's where you still live today. You weren't a dojo jumper who was just like, you're meeting lots of people and taking them in, but you're bringing it back to the thing that is your base and your root. And you were never disloyal to your sensei, and you're still not disloyal to your sensei. And I think that's a good lesson for people to take away. Most effective move, front or a side kick. No doubt, the greatest influences, Sensei Shintani, the champ Joe Louis, and Bill Superfoot Wallace. Bruce Lee, that's the most given answer, so it must be true. For the most influential. Next 5 years, full side splits. I want to see it. I'm going to hold you accountable to that. Every time I see you, I'm going to say, Sensei Prime, I want to see those side splits. I really like what you said about what God would say, that you gave more than you took. That's a life of service, isn't it? Like if you're in a life of service, then you're giving more than you're taking. I like Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal, and you were polite enough not to mention that it was Chuck Zito that punched him out, who is his bodyguard. Living or dead, going back and training with Shintani Sensei one time. That's a very heartwarming answer. The ability to step back and analyze, again, the people you've influenced positively. I just really had a really good time seeing you again. Also, I just want to mention, like, you're always smiling, Sensei. Like you're smiling when you're talking, when you're telling your stories. It's just awesome to that joy. Really, you project that joy, and I hope you always do. Before we give the last word to you, I just want to thank some people, and I'm not going to do first and last. I'm going to do it my way. So I want to thank Robert, Andre, Alden, Sydney, Justin, Dan, Christiana, Emily, and as well Dridi, who's running the show tonight, and Stavros. Without those people, we know them on a first name basis. Without those people, this isn't happening. They do all the work behind the scenes, and we really appreciate them. Sensei Prime, what do you want to say as you go out tonight about your time with us?
I had a great time. I'll be honest, I was nervous coming up to this, thinking, how am I going to fill an hour and a half? But, anybody who knows me, I can talk. But no, you guys are doing an amazing service, right? Like, you've had some pretty big names on this show, and you have us small guys here too, right? Which is really cool to keep the mix going. As far as I try to be happy. I always said that I'll do it, and regardless of what it is, karate. I've been doing it for a long time because I am still having fun. When I stop having fun, I do something else. It's as simple as that, right? I mean, there's enough things in life that can weigh us down. Our extracurricular activities should not be that. So I do have fun. Control. I was joking with a friend of mine when we were talking about, having control. And I said, oh, no, honest, I really do have good control. I just don't always use it. So it depends on who I'm sparring. I was joking. No, your training partners make you, right? Make you or break you. So that's super important. You guys are doing an amazing job. I'm really, really super honored to be able to share my stories, and let people know that, yeah, you can practice and really enjoy the traditional arts, and you can still have fun and play the sports side of it as well.
Thank you.
Love
Thanks.
it. Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great night.
Good night.